With that said, we are now recording. Hello, my name is Rick Boulay, and I'm the president of Cullen Educators Association and of Region 10 of the Texas State Teachers Association. I'd like to welcome you to our Cullen ISD School Board of Trustees Candidate Forum. I'm very pleased to be your moderator for today's discussion. Enshrined in the Constitution is one of the most important functions that we can perform: our ability to select the officials that make the decisions on how the district operates through our vote. It's through this process that we make our voices and wishes known as to how we wish the education of our children to ultimately proceed in Cullen ISD. The level of material support the district provides, the quality and condition of its facilities, the safety of its buses and equipment, how its educators and support professionals are compensated and treated in the workplace. All of these things and more are provided through the election of those serving on the Board of Trustees. We're here to have a conversation with those who are seeking positions on the board for places 6 and 7. Our goal is to learn more about their stances on positions that directly impact students and those who help make their education possible, how they think, and how they would approach the challenges that face KISD as we continue into the future. We encourage you to listen to their responses as many times as you need and give careful consideration to whom you wish to lead the district forward. Most of all, we highly encourage you to use your power to vote. A voice that remains silent is a voice that gives up control over its fate. We want you, the viewer, to know that the questions for tonight's conversation were selected in advance. All the questions will be put to all the candidates to answer so that you may make your own comparisons and draw your own conclusions. The Executive Board of Cullen Educators Association has not made any decisions regarding potential endorsements and will not make them prior to the conclusion and publishing of this forum in its entirety. So at this time, I would like to introduce the members of the Executive Board that are present for Cullen Educators Association. First of all, we have our first Vice President, Mr. Johnny J.J. Williams. You can wave and say hi.
Good evening, everybody.
And we have our second Vice President, Ms. Rachel Barrage.
Hello, everyone.
We have our Secretary, Ms. Jennifer Boulay.
Hello, everyone.
We have our Treasurer, Ms. Angelin Ringland.
Hi.
And we also have, joining us live from his school bus, our Transportation at Large Board member, Mr. Daniel Bundrant. So,
everybody.
Thank you. Also with us this evening is Cullen PTA President Trina Thompson and TSTA member organizer Jason Wiley.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
All right. I don't think I missed anybody, so that's good. So now let's introduce tonight's candidates. Running for place 6, we have candidates Riakos Adams and Cullen Mills. Running for place 7, we have candidates Lan Carter, who has not joined us just yet, and Miss Joanne Purser. So we want to welcome all of you and appreciate you very much being here this evening. We want to mention a few brief logistical items before we get started. We do have an ambitious and extensive set of questions to help us get through them all. We ask that you limit your response times to 3 minutes or less. I mean, that's all we get for public forum at board meetings, so it's only fair that we return the favor. So secondly, also to move things along, we ask that you limit your responses to the moderator, that's me, and avoid debating with each other should that temptation arise, because we want our members and viewers to make their own determinations as regards to their views. And with that said, let us go ahead and get started with a couple of warm-up questions. First, Mr. Adams. We'll just go down the line for 6 and 7, and then we'll rotate around. So, Mr. Adams, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Oh, good evening again, everyone. I am Riakos Adams. I'm a retiree that made Cullen home. I was commissioned at Howard University in DC with a bachelor's of political science, and I have my master's in business management and organizational security, and I'm working on my doctorate in education from Liberty. Let's see, I am currently the president of Cullen Volunteers Incorporated. I co-chair our KSD Shack, and I serve on a couple of other boards within the city of Cullen, and also serve on the Bell County Child Welfare Board. I am a member of numerous other organizations I just realized that I'm a member of after I listed them. But all of them are active in the community, and that includes the LULAC Herencia Council number 4927, the PTA Council for KISD, VFW and the Disabled American Veterans. And I attend Greater Vision Community Church, where I serve on the trustee and finance committee, and I chair the safety and security ministry and co-chair the men's ministry. I have two adorable children in Killeen ISD schools, one in elementary school and one in high school.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Next up in place 6, we have Mr. Cullen Mills.
Make sure that I'm unmuted there. I'm Cullen Mills. I was born and raised here in Killeen. I'm a lifelong resident of Killeen. I'm a product of KISD schools from first grade all the way through graduating from Parker Heights High School. I was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship to play football at the University of North Texas, where I earned my degree in business economics. It was there that I also met my wife, Erin Mills, who works for the district now as a parent educator in our special education department. And we have 2 kids in the district currently, both at Clifton Park. Noah's our son in 5th grade, and Avery is our daughter in 2nd grade. And we moved back here in 2009 because, again, this is the only place I've ever called home. And I'm proud to be from Killeen. I'm better having been a student in our district. It's truly molded me into who I am today. So, and as far as organizations that I belong to, I'm currently on the executive board for the KISD Education Foundation. I serve on the board of governors for the Untitled Chapter of AUSA. And I'm also a member of First Baptist Church Killeen, where I serve on the long range planning committee. And I'm also the current president of our personnel committee at church. So.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mills. Ms. Carter did contact me. She is looking for the link to log in, but while we're waiting for that, oh, there she is. So while we're waiting for Lan to finish joining, Ms. Purser, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and mention a couple of things about yourself too. You're on mute. That darned mute button. Hang on.
Okay,
There you go.
so I'm Joanne Purser. I have been in Killeen for 47 years. I started off at Eastward Elementary School and attended Nolan Middle School, junior high at the time, Manor Junior High, and then also Rancier Junior High. Attended Killeen High School and graduated from Killeen High School. I have 2 children that were Ellison graduates, Christina and Benjamin, and I have 2 grandchildren, Catherine and Jackson. I have served on the school board with 3 current terms. I have been reelected each term. I have been a previous city council member for the city of Killeen. As far as volunteer organizations, I have served on the Greater Killeen Chamber of Commerce as a vice president. I have served on the organization for Killeen Junior League and through Ways and Means and also presidency. I've been a PTA president for Reeses Creek Elementary School and Nolan Middle School, and even was quarterback club president at Ellison High School, even though I did not have a sports child in the program. I just tried to lend my leadership skills to help the organization. I love working. I have a rental property here in Killeen and have a rental company called Bentina Rentals, where I manage and own my own duplexes. And then I have a home building company here in Killeen known as Purser Homes. So that is what I do. Before that, I used to be a fashionista and I had a clothing store. Many people knew me from the Style Shop because I did lots of fashion shows, and I also did a lot of fundraising with different style shows for different organizations. You know, the reason I'm still doing what I do is because I love my community. I am a product of my community. There were lots of people that helped my mom as a single parent raise me. And I have a calling that I want to give back to my community. So for all the differences that I'm able to make in children's lives, there were people that made lots of differences in my life as I was growing up. So I'm hoping that there are things that I'm doing that is truly making a difference in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purser. And last but certainly not least is Miss Lan Carter. Lan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, first of all, I want to say, am I muted? No, I'm unmuted. Okay. Thank you. I just want to say I'm sorry for being late. I just basically just drove in from Waco, but doing mommy duties. But so I'm a parent. I have 2 school-age children right now. One just turned 12 and one just turned 16. And then my 18-year-old will be 19 next month. So she graduated last year. So I have my hands full. My husband is a retired soldier. So he's been retired now for 3 years. I was an educator for about 8 years. I taught at the elementary level, was kindergarten, 5th grade, and then I taught high school 9 through 12. I am currently a therapist. I've been a therapist for the last, I would say about 2-3 years. And I work in private practice. I also worked in inpatient hospitals, dealing with adolescents and children. That's who pretty much I specialize in, although I do see adults. I like working with the Army community because I grew up in the Army community. My father is retired military, as well as my husband. My focus basically is on raising my children while they're small. So I'm not in a lot of organizations because, as you know, as being a teacher, you don't have a lot of free time. And there were times I'd get off work. It was 8, 10 o'clock at night. And my daughter would say to me, "Mom, your students spend more time, your students see you more than we do." And so when she said that, I had to cut back on some of the, extracurricular activities. I used to be a founding member of the Clean Exchange Club. So I had to stop doing that. I was a former member of the Noon Exchange Club. Basically, like I said, I had to cut back on some of the activities that I did and focus on being mom while I could, while they're still little. I also opened up a nonprofit called Operation Pay It Forward for the homeless. Basically, when Clean became tent city for that summer, that's when I started working with the homeless on a more personal level. But that's basically me in a nutshell.
Okay, great. So with that said, we will move on to our next question. And it's the one that everyone gets in the job interview. And that is, why are you running for school board? We might as well start off right with that, right? So Mr. Mills, let's go ahead and start with you. And then we'll do Ms. Purser, Ms. Carter, and then Mr. Adams. We'll just cycle through that way.
Okay, why am I running for school board? A lot of it is kind of what I touched on earlier, as far as that I'm a product of this district. I know how wonderful it is. Again, I'm very fortunate to have gone to Clean ISD my entire time growing up. And again, it truly molded me into who I am today. It's a very rich and diverse community, and it's unlike any other community that I can think of. And it's a blessing to have graduated from here. And I care deeply about my community. I've watched many civic leaders in our community through the years that have helped move this community forward. And I can't think of a better way to pay that forward than to invest in our children's futures. They're the next generation. They're where I was 20 years ago, and where Joanne, mentioned earlier, where she was before me. And so again, I care a great deal about this community. Also, as a parent, I think it's important to have parents on the board with kids currently in the district. I think it's important to have that perspective. And so I want to be a voice for those parents in the district. And I'm also a small business owner, and I failed to mention that earlier. But I assumed ownership of my family's business that my grandfather started in 1957, and I assumed ownership about a little over 4 years ago. And so I know what it's like to set and maintain budgets, and to operate within those budgets, to set and maintain goals, and have to again operate within those goals and in that budget. So I think bringing that small business mentality to the school board I can bring that as an asset to the school board. So. In short, I care about this community. I'm from here. I have children in the district. And again, as a small business owner, I can bring that to the board as an asset.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Ms. Purser.
Hi, again, the reason I'm wanting to serve the community is because of things that were given to me that were set by the foundation of our community years and years ago, decades ago. And I just want to be able to build upon the infrastructure of that. I do believe that everybody should try to do what they can to help their community. This is one area, though, that I feel that I can best serve because of the fact that I do have the ear of a lot of young people that don't have flexible schedules. They want a voice, they want a strong voice that will raise concerns. And they have found that in me. So I'm able to bring concerns forward to the board and to the agenda for further discussion or for consideration. I just also, as a property owner here in Killeen, when we talk about setting the tax rate, it's kind of nice to have somebody sitting on the board that actually has skin in the game. We all pay property taxes on our homes. And when you have also real estate that you're paying property taxes on, you tend to be a little more careful also with setting the tax rate and how we spend that money going forward. So that we can make sure we're getting the best value for our dollar and making sure that whatever budget the administration is wanting to prepare and bring forward to us, that we're actually being very, very conservative and careful with how we're spending our money. So also as a business owner, I understand HR issues when it comes to benefits. And I have a little bit of experience in that when it comes to health insurance and benefits to my employees. So those are things that I can certainly discuss as those proposals are being brought forward to the board. So I just feel like with all my life experiences and the challenges that I deal with on a day-to-day basis and over the decades of myself in business, I feel like I have a lot of experience that I'd like to, again, bring to the table so that we help mold and shape the budget and also the benefits to our employees for the school district. Thank you.
It helps when the moderator unmutes his own microphone, right? Thank you, Ms. Purser. Ms. Carter.
Okay. Well, I'm running for school board basically because I feel that there are lots of deficits within KISD, and for whatever reason, you know, I don't always agree with Dr. Kraft's decisions, and I just think that there needs to be a voice that basically is willing to stand up and say, hey, I don't agree with it. Let's go ahead. And, you know, we can't be a great school district if we're unwilling to acknowledge that there's deficits, and you know, we can't problem solve if we're going to bury our heads in the ground. And I think that's what we've been doing a lot, especially with the whole COVID thing. You know, so I've seen a lot of issues that needed to be fixing, and I just feel that, you know, Dr. Kraft and the school board at this point, they do not really listen to parents and the community members, and I think that that's what we're missing. We've been in, you know, we talk about special ed every year, and our special ed department really hasn't improved that much. And we've been out of compliance for years. And yes, it's gotten a little bit better, but we're still in the hole. So, you know, when I think about a $42,000 raise that everybody thought he deserved, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, how did he deserve a $42,000 raise when we still have deficits? We still have issues within the district. We're having situations like students being sent to DAP. We don't have uniform policies in place. Those things are not fair. When teachers don't have the resources they need and students don't have the resources they need, that's an issue for me. And so I plan to be that sounding board. I think I've always been transparent. I think board members are supposed to listen to the community. And, you know, as a therapist, I have lots of clients that are parents and unfortunately students. And they complain about some of the issues within KISD. And I hear these things. And, you know, so my point being is that I think school board members also have to be active within the schools. I think just taking information based on what's presented to them at the board is an unwise decision. They need to go out there and start investigating, you know, ask questions, put things on the agenda, things that they're hearing. Usually if you're hearing it more than once, there's probably an issue. And that's what I think that, you know, that's what I bring to the board is that I don't believe everything based on face value. I do my research. I put in my public information requests. I ask around. And I think that's what we need more. We need more proactive board members. And right now, Dr. Kraft seems to be leading. And my idea of board members are basically, it's a checks and balance system. And I don't see that happening right now.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carter. And Mr. Adams.
Hate to be last.
You won't be last in every question.
Well, I have always believed in service. You know, I ever since I was a Cub Scout going into my Boy Scout years, that was a long time ago. And I believe I don't like having children in the district. I could choose to be a parent that complains, or I could be someone that gets up and be actively engaged. And I'm choosing to be engaged. And so I'm running to set up all students and stakeholders for success. I know nobody can do it alone. And hats off to the teachers and administrators on your dedication. But we need input from all stakeholders to be better informed. And before we make decisions, so everyone understands, so we can close the achievement gap, and create conditions in which all of our employees and students thrive. I'm running because I've had conversations, and I want to continue and begin more conversations with those who may feel like they want a stake in their child's education. And I want to let them know I'm here. I see you, I hear you, and your voice is valued. I want to work with all our support staff, our students, teachers, families, and the taxpayers as we collectively work together to learn to grow. Nelson Mandela said, education is the most important or most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. We have, in 12 years, you can change a community. Those 12 years correspond with the 12 grades. Outside, well, include pre-K, so it's 14, but when I believe we have to equip students with the proper tools to be successful. I also believe that we have to provide teachers with the proper resources and support to succeed in our mission for a better future. I care. I care about the future of the district. I care about the future of our community, all three, and for Hood collectively. And with that, and why I'm running is to present this vision that's to try to keep things going, which I break it down into community. I want to see us more unified. I want to increase engagement and involvement. I think people are less likely to tear down fences that they help build. I want to improve accountability. I think we need to see more transparency in all of our processes, decisions, and actions at all levels. This is our district, and each of us deserve to have input and know what is happening. The good, the bad, the indifferent. We need to know all these so we can all grow together and make improvements, because when we know better, we do better. I want to see more stronger relationships with all stakeholders. I believe that when we link arm in arm, we can enrich our schools and provide healthy outlets for our students to thwart this rising epidemic of youth crime. I also want to see more equity and access and opportunity for all staff and students. And that means giving everybody what they need to succeed, whether it's in the classroom as a student or as a teacher who needs to be heard. And when we do that, we're able to make better decisions. You know, we really want every student to be future rating. We got to address policies, practices, and procedures. And I intend to do that. We can't keep with establishment or tradition or the way things have always been done, how it hasn't completely worked for all of us. And I want to advocate for all students, all teachers, and all voices so that they feel like they have a seat at the table. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Moving on to the next question, and we're going to move into a bit about staffing right now. And Ms. Purser, you get this one first. So as a result of the pandemic, there's been a large number of resignations and retirements. And that means that, you know, Killeen ISD, along with all of public education, are going to need to fill some vacant positions. And there's going to be some competition for those things. How would each of you propose to attract employees to Killeen ISD, and even more importantly, retain them? And Ms. Purser, you go first.
Well, I believe that we have a stellar district, despite where some people have made a a rash comment about certain inadequacies in certain departments. I believe all in all, we have a very fair and stellar school district. We have the ability to now, our school board is considering and putting together and implementing the self-insuring for the health insurance, which is going to allow us to be able to pass that savings on to the employees, which again is going to help our taxpayers. So it's a benefit for all. So hopefully we'll be able to find in the budget also later this year, the ability to give more money to the school district employees in the benefit of a raise. So when we do that, I think that people understand that we are still trying everything that we can to make sure that we are putting together the most efficient budget and still providing all the services that we need for our students and for, basically our customers, our students and the parents of the students. So how we retain them is we're going to have to make sure that we still offer professional development to our educators. COVID has been an unusual school year. We've had to take away some times that we've allowed. We've had to kind of modify the school schedule. This has been a very challenging school year. But when we get past the pandemic and get back onto a new normal, where we offer virtual and also in-person education, I think we'll be able to kind of let the dust settle, get the educators their time that they need in order to prepare lessons, because that alone is a benefit when they're not taking away from their family time. We know that that's a benefit, and we have a board that is very supportive of doing that. We also want to make sure that we give them the professional development days prior to the school year beginning, so that all of us together are learning a standard of professionalism, so that we, again, create a benefit where people understand we are investing in them. And when they see a board that continually does that, and they see the leadership with Dr. Kraft allowing for that budget item and suggesting that budget item, I think that they'll see that we have a truly supportive district. So I really encourage people to consider coming to Killeen ISD in all facets of the jobs, because I do think that past this pandemic, which has been very challenging, I think we are going to be on the path to making some very good and sound policy changes and choices that are going to be very helpful for all families of the staff of KISD.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Purser. Ms. Carter.
Sorry, can you ask the question again?
Absolutely. With the pandemic happening, there have been a large number of resignations and retirements, and that means that Killeen ISD, along with all of public education, are going to need to fill some vacant positions. And how would you propose to attract employees to Killeen ISD and, even more importantly, retain them?
The first thing would be to deal with why they're retiring early and why they're leaving, which to me would speak of COVID, the safety of COVID. So I would acknowledge that first and talk about what can we do to keep them. It might be having some teachers work remotely, because if the fear of catching COVID is what's keeping them out of the classroom, then that's what we need to go ahead and acknowledge. So that's going to be one of them. And, and would it be great to go ahead and pay our senior teachers longevity pay? Of course. But, money in itself doesn't keep teachers in place. It's the environment of loyalty. And the only way you're going to get loyalty is to make them feel valued and appreciated, meaning that their concerns are being heard. If they're feeling like the atmosphere is negative and, and they're not being heard, there's no reason to stay. So I think we need to change the atmosphere and make sure that the atmosphere is positive, make sure that their safety is paramount, basically, making sure that they're, the message is heard. Leaving because of COVID, it's not something that someone takes lightly. It's expensive to quit a job. When you got to think about healthcare, what do I do now if I'm not having an income coming in? Plus, a lot of teachers that do retire, they honestly really have a hard time making it from month to month. But thinking about, like I said, right now is it's a really scary time to be without a job. So like I would sit there and have these conversations with the staff. What can we do? My biggest thing is, you can go have FMLA, but when you're on FMLA, you're not getting paid. So if you're sick or you're in the, or you have family members that are sick and you have to take care of them, FMLA is not going to cover it. It's protecting your job. But in the meantime, what's paying your bills? And that's the kind of things that we need, those kind of discussions we need to have. And to show our staff that we really appreciate them so that they don't hop from district to district. Killeen is one of the highest paid districts, obviously, in this area, but that and alone, again, doesn't keep them from hopping districts. And that's something that they need to think about why.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Mr. Adams.
All right. So after talking to some teachers and listening to what they've said, one, I would definitely voice my support for the House bill that raises the minimum salary for teachers, new teachers to longer serving teachers with that elevated pay schedule. I would definitely push for recruiting from diverse areas and diverse backgrounds. And I'd be even willing to volunteer to go assist in recruiting. Make recruiting a community issue in a sense where we host a combine-like thing. Because I say combine, because I really think teachers should be paid like football players. And we announce our first, second, and third round draft picks or whatever. Unfortunately, we can't pay them like football players until we figure out a way to fund it. But we make that recruiting event a community event, and we have the community and our municipal partners also sell why they should come here and stay here. When we're looking at careers, I know the district wants to hire students who want to be in teaching. I think we need to expand that program where somebody graduates from KISD, when they go off to school, we stay in touch with them and bring them back home so that our community don't disappear because all our children are leaving. Especially if they really want to teach. What better place to teach in the district that you came from? Provide more classroom resources so teachers don't pay out of pocket. I think we realistically have to look at our budget to make sure that you have no complaint or you from a teacher saying I had to come out of pocket. And I understand there are also some House bills that that's going to allow us some tax write-offs for teachers paying out of pocket for classroom supplies. But I figure if you're being taught, we should give you the tools to do your job. Add more incentives for teachers that go above and beyond, and then improve the ability that teachers have to file complaints and not have to worry about retribution. So that way, the morale improves, teachers, the pay is improved, and I agree that we do have a higher skills, but I know that there are some teachers that are close to the poverty line. So I think these things, and these are just suggestions, of course, but these things I think will take us into a better direction and give us it will bring better teachers. It will keep the great teachers we have now, and it may make teachers wait longer before they retire. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. And Mr. Mills, you get to be tail end Charlie on this one.
All right. My thoughts are, COVID with many things has kind of amplified underlying conditions that existed in many ways. And this being one of them when it comes to attracting and retaining teachers. I know we're a transit community, but it's something that KISD deals with every year as far as hiring, hundreds of teachers each year. And again, we're an Army community, so I understand that plays a role in that. But I think we have to attract teachers by selling them on the fact that this is a great place to live, that Killeen is, it's an affordable place to live. We're close to a lot of metro areas. You're not far from Austin or San Antonio or Dallas, Fort Worth. The other thing is you have to create a culture that these teachers enjoy their job, that they enjoy coming to work. Teaching is very much a calling, and it's not necessarily always about pay, although that certainly never hurts to compensate people for their hard work. KISD has to find ways to create a culture for these teachers where they enjoy coming to work every day, that they feel safe, that they feel like if they have concerns, that they can bring those forward, whether it's to the administration with the district or us at the school board. You know, as a small business owner, retention is a big thing. You know, you hate having to hire people over and over again. And it's, so KSD has to find innovative ways to attract, train, and retain these teachers so that we can keep them in our district. And, you know, listening to this last school board meeting, I was excited to hear about some of these ideas that were being put forth by the legislator at the state as far as compensating these teachers and doing it based on their performance. And so, again, we want to reward teachers for their hard work. And there's this, you know, as a school district, there's this dueling, you know, thing going on as far as on one end, you have taxpayer money and we're publicly funded, but you also want to give every resource you can to the teachers so that they can be successful. And then ultimately it just boils down to making sure that the kids are having the resources needed to be successful. So again, it's about attracting and training and retaining these teachers.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mills. So let's do a very quick 1 minute follow-up question. Staffing issues with transportation became an issue this week specifically, and over the years, transportation shortages have been something of a bugaboo that the district has had to deal with. Very quickly, can you give me a specific 1 minute or less, you know, a quick method in which you would address those issues? Ms. Carter, we'll start with you.
Well, I would increase the pay. I mean, if we have such a shortage, obviously, you know, increasing the pay would get more people in, especially with COVID right now, a lot of people being out of work. So that would help. But I also would address the issue with the lack of safety, meaning the COVID, spacing out the children. That's one thing I noticed that KSD didn't do at the beginning. They didn't follow the CDC's recommendation to have, you know, I believe it was 10 kids. I forgot what it is. I'm sorry, but they didn't space out the kids according to CDC's recommendation. So that kind of bothered me. But, you know, also too, is that, you know, you want to make sure that our bus drivers aren't overworked, where they're not having to sit there and go back and forth, where they're having shift overlaps. We want to make sure, like I said, to bring in some more staff to make them feel appreciated. We've got to change the environment. You know, I've talked to people, you know, where they've said that there's toxic environment, the transportation department. So if we change the environment, make it more positive, then you're going to get more people there. You know, that's one thing about Killeen being, it's not a huge town, but it's small enough where word of mouth goes there. Same thing with why are our teachers jumping around? It's word of mouth. So we've got to change the perspective of how we're looking at the district. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams.
Yes, we do need to address some morale issues at the in the transportation department. However, I would also need to relook how we're doing school transportation in general. We have a shortage. We can't find drivers. Then let's support some of the interlocal discussions about our transit system around here in general. KISD could, like other school districts, invest or become part of a DOT program and give tokens or sell the tokens to the students, and the buses could actually, you use the school buses for those areas that are not along a bus route. But if KISD participates with the rest of the community and support that, it potentially could bring more funding. I think bus routes that serve our high schools, you probably would not need any more additional bus drivers, and you would focus the bus drivers in those areas that you can't get a route in.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Mills.
You know, this is kind of a difficult thing to answer as far as you know, how we go about this. You know, I love the idea of you know, paying more money to attract the bus drivers. But you also have to understand that a lot of these drivers, you're also competing against the UPSs and the FedExes and the Amazons of the world. And unfortunately, being a tax funded entity, I don't know that we'll ever have the money to compete with those large giants that are making money. And so I don't know that that's the answer. It certainly wouldn't hurt. But again, you're competing against those entities. As far as spacing the kids out, that would create an issue with more school buses, more routes, and it just becomes costly. So I don't know that I have the answer, but we've got to find innovative ways, again, to get these people to work and to keep them here at work. So it's a bit of a complicated issue, but one that we certainly need to tackle.
Thank you. And Ms. Purser.
Thank you. And, I'm going to kind of piggyback what Mr. Mills said. The construction and all the transportation industry absolutely watches municipalities. So whether it be the county or the school districts or the cities, if we give a raise, they're just going to counter it. They have the ability to raise more money than we do, because then they just pass those costs on to the customer. We have to build it in our budget and then have to go after the tax rate, the effective rate. So we have to plan our budget out a year in advance. So that's a problem. Raising the money that way just causes the construction and the transportation industry to raise their rates immediately after we do. So that isn't a fix. What is a fix is making sure that we have a very hospitable work environment, making sure that we offer good benefits, the work schedule, early in the morning and then basically cutting off at dusk. There's a lot of the transportation industry that has to be on the road much later than we are. So short of sporting activities and band programs, the transportation have, at least it's a lifestyle that they either want this lifestyle or they don't. If they don't want to commute and be away from their family and they want to be in this area, this is a good job. So being able to start early in the day and be home for dinner at night, that speaks a lot to the lifestyle that bus drivers want. So I really feel like it's a calling, and it depends on what they want in their life for their family. So we just have to make sure that we're doing the best we can as stewards with the money and offer a very conservative package, make sure that they're not, burning the candle at both ends and really hurting the children with the safety issues. We don't want any safety issues with our bus drivers. So we want to make sure that they're being taken care of. And like I said earlier, the morale. We just want to make sure that they have a good morale and work environment. So I think we just need to keep working on that. I think we just need to concentrate on the leadership and all the department heads and just make sure that they're doing the best they can under, except for the extreme circumstances that we're in with COVID, because this has just been a very unusual year. We've always had a problem with a shortage of bus drivers. This isn't anything new, just like the old adage of all the portable buildings. That was going on for decades. This has been going on for decades as well. This is just a fast growing and evolving school district because pockets of our community, the transportation changes within 6 months. And so routes are constantly being modified to take care of the needs of our students that are needing transportation to their schools. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Several of you mentioned employee benefits. So let's talk about them. Quality, affordable healthcare is obviously a very important issue to KISD employees. How important is it to you? And this time around, I believe we start with Mr. Adams.
I'm first with a harder question. Well, first of all, employee wellness is key to provide a great service to our children. So I support the initiative that the board is working on now and the superintendent improving the healthcare offer. And I don't know yet if that's the be all end all, but it's a step forward in the right direction. But I think we should be constantly trying to figure out ways to make sure that our employees are safe, they're healthy, because a healthy teacher and a healthy child means a healthy district and a healthy community. So our benefit package needs to make sure it covers the whole person, and it allows our teachers to do it, not have to worry about those things, so they can focus on what we really want teachers to do.
All right, Mr. Mills.
Would you mind repeating the question just to clarify for me?
Not at all. Quality, affordable healthcare is a very important issue for Killeen ISD employees. And how important is that to you?
Well, it's very important. Again, it goes back to kind of what I mentioned earlier as far as attracting the teachers to the district. It's not just so much about how much money enters their paycheck each month, but also the benefits that go along with that and the security that goes along with that as well. And just knowing that you and your family are going to be taken care of. It's important to the district to offer that so we can attract, again, teachers. I know that part of what KSD recently passed was the partially funded health insurance, which that's a huge savings for the district, that we can use that money to, whether it's to increase teacher pay. But again, we've got to create a culture where teachers enjoy what they do, and benefits is certainly a huge piece of that puzzle.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Purser.
Thank you. Well, obviously, wellness is real important, because if people are making healthy choices every day in their life, they are better performers, whether they're performing at home or at work. So I think one of the things that has kind of morphed with our health insurance is the fact that we have developed the wellness program and helped educate people on how to better take care of themselves. With that, the school district, has also benefited because there have been less claims. So again, because there's been less claims, our health insurance has not skyrocketed like some other, municipalities and other school districts have. So that's been very, very helpful. And it's kudos to the employees, because they're the ones that did this. Now what we've been able to do is introduce this partially self-funded health insurance, and hopefully still offer benefits that are going to really help families by offering them choice, offering them the prescriptions they're needing, and the flexibility to being able to go to the doctors they really want to go to. And I think that that's real important for certain families, because they have special needs, they have specialty illnesses, and they want to make sure that they especially go to the same doctor they've been going to for a long time. So the difficulty about constantly going out for bid on health insurance is there's been a lot of uncertainty in families, because they didn't know which doctors they were going to be able to go to, what the copay was going to be, if prescriptions were included, all of it. So it's been really very difficult this last decade. But I think that this is going to be very positive, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think everybody's going to benefit from it, from not only the taxpayer, but all the way to the employees. I think everybody's going to reap a benefit from this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Okay, well, I believe that quality and affordable healthcare is extremely important. But the problem is, if we can't afford the healthcare, they're not going to get healthcare. So, and we talk about teachers a lot, but sometimes we overlook that we have a lot of non-salaried staff that can't really, if you think about like a paraprofessional, they work full time, and then they're making $1,300, $1,400 a month. And then let's just go ahead and just say, okay, now they've got a family that they've got to use that health insurance for. That's about half of their take-home pay. That's a lot of money that's just going into healthcare insurance. And I've known people to take on a paraprofessional role just to get insurance for their family if they're a single parent. So yes, that's what I said. Yeah, quality healthcare is extremely important, especially if they have medical conditions, or their child has medical conditions. But we have to remember it has to be affordable as well, because if you can't afford it, you're not going to get it. So I think that that's really important when we think about, what can our staff afford? We have tons of non-salaried employees out there, paraprofessionals, we've got cafeteria staff, custodians, and, especially with COVID right now, I'm pretty sure that's a huge concern right now, is basically how are they going to get good, affordable healthcare?
Okay, thank you very much. One of the concerns that was iterated by Dr. Kraft throughout the past summer was trying to avoid staffing cuts and his concerns with COVID, beyond those that were made this past year just by attrition. Although we hope it's not ever going to be a concern, but if it is, what criterion would be first and foremost in terms of deciding a reduction in force for you, should that awful scenario ever come to pass? And Mr. Mills gets to start this one.
Okay, hopefully we don't get to that point, but it's kind of out of our hands. It's my understanding that right at 75% of our money comes from the state. So a lot of this is not within our control. As far as who do we decide to keep and who do we let go if it gets down to that point? I think there has to be several factors involved in that. One being longevity. I think, teachers that have been with the district longer should receive at least some degree of priority. I also think there has to be some type of evaluation system. I don't know exactly what that would look like for each position, but we have to make sure that we're keeping the best teachers and staff on hand, not just necessarily because you've been here the longest. So we've got to make sure that we're doing what's best for the kids by keeping those teachers that are performing the best. And so again, hopefully it's something that it doesn't come down to. It may be inevitable, unfortunately. And so again, we've got to figure out a way to prioritize and do what's best for the children and do what's best for the kids and their education. And it'll be a difficult discussion, but we'll do what's best for the kids.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Ms. Purser.
Well, I think it all gets back down to just the basic ratios. If the TEA guidelines or if the safety guidelines require us to have a 51 ratio, a 200-to-1 ratio, whatever that qualification is for that department or that staffing position, I think that's what we're going to have to really look at and just make sure that we're meeting the guidelines. We'd have to have communications with, again, even local and comparable school districts, local school districts, because we want to know what's happening in our sister cities, sister districts, but then also comparable school districts with the same size of campuses. You can't compare, a 2,600 student campus with a 6,000 student campus at the high school level. We really need to make sure that we're comparing district to district that are more comparable to us. So I think we're just going to kind of have to map that out. Once we look at that criteria, I think then the boards, whoever that board is, will really make the best decision for the staff to make sure that they're safe and can do their job, and then also the students to make sure they're getting the services and the safety they deserve as well.
Thank you, Ms. Purser. Ms. Carter.
Well, I think that, there needs to be a uniform policy set in place of who are we going to replace and who are we going to keep. I don't think it should just be, hey, we're going to let the administrators on campus decide who we're going to keep, because sometimes that can be unbiased and favoritism comes into place. So there has to be a uniform system of way of dealing with that. We want to go ahead and hopefully keep our senior teachers. So hopefully seniority does come into place as well. But a big thing is that, like I said, the goal is to preserve our teachers, because you don't have a school without teachers, obviously. But I think that, we need to look at, if we're looking at cutting positions, then we need to look at cutting some administrative positions, especially positions that have been created basically within the last couple of years. I think we need to think about doing some cross training. where, you might have been hired for this position, but you're doing more than one position. Basically when, we're going through tough times. And if you want to keep a job, you've got to be flexible and willing to do more than one thing. So I think that that's a big issue. It may be even our administrators that are making a huge salary, they may have to, if they want to stay in that position, they may have to take a pay cut. That's just the way it is in the civilian world. If you want, even a new company comes on and you want to work for that new company, you're going to take a pay cut. I mean, those are some hard decisions that we have to make, but that's basically, if people want to keep a job right now, then they have to be willing to do that. But again, our main mission again is to educate the students. So education has to come first, and we need to preserve those teaching positions, those paraprofessional positions, to make sure that our students are still getting the quality education that they're used to. So that's what's really important, making sure we're not cutting too much. That's basically all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Adams.
Thanks. I didn't mention in my intro, I've had to deal with this at the federal level about 4 times when we've had reduction in forces, and that's both active duty and civilian. And it's a hard thing to have to tell someone that they might not have a job. But in just taking some of the best practices I've learned and having to be a part of that process, or even having to make that decision, I will first look at, I got to look at my administration, how heavy or top heavy it is, because all of that, if it's the things that do not directly affect the mission, and I apologize that I'm using a military term, but KISD still has a mission. If it does not affect the teaching of the child, those are the first things we review. And then we start looking, if we still haven't met the intent, because we, just like the others have said, we still got to follow regulatory guidance. And then we look at how, and I agree, we look at how other districts are doing things. But then we create, now we still haven't gotten there. We create some type of package where either we offer early outs, if we're allowed to do that. We offer pay cuts or something, but it's all based off of, first, we cut the additional spending first, unnecessary, and then we start going towards where the rubber meets the road with the teachers and the school staff.
All right, thank you. So the next couple of questions deal with funding and accountability. And starting with Ms. Purser for this question, what is your position on funding for public schools based on high stakes accountability testing like the STAR exam?
Well, I mean, a lot of this is going to be based on what TEA regulations and of course our state regulations call for. So the way we understand it at this time, that if a student is attending in-person education classes today, they will be taking the exam. We do encourage parents that if their student is a virtual student, that they try to make arrangements for that test. It's real important for everybody to understand that even though this is a test, they really need to know where their student is in their education. We lost from March to May all of that education. We lost a lot of weather days that children have been excused from, but it still doesn't stop the fact that we missed school. And so I do think that parents really need to take a step back and realize what's in the best interest of their kid. We have a lot of students that are not doing well. They didn't adapt well with virtual education. They're having problems in class as well. And so those families are going to have to start making some really tough decisions as to whether or not they promote their student or that they can attend or continue their education through the summer. Because we're going to be offering some sort of bridging program so that if they feel that their student hasn't gotten all the basics of this school year, that they should consider taking some further education throughout the summer at all of our summer school campuses. And, possibly make, the right choice for their kid today so that they don't lose the basic skills that they're going to need in order to further their education and make sure that they're either adaptable in the workplace, have a great trade that they learn later in life, or that they also consider a higher education at one of our universities or our colleges. So I really do think that people need to understand, even if they have a virtual student, they really should consider taking the exam to understand what their children have learned this school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purser. Ms. Carter.
Well, I firmly believe that, the STAR assessment is not going to accurately predict where a student is academically right now because of COVID. We've got students dealing with, mental health issues because of COVID. They're feeling, they've got increased anxiety and depression. Their families also experiencing anxiety and depression, especially if they've had someone, they've lost someone due to COVID. You've got people who are out of jobs. So these are things that, that the students are going to feel because it's close to home. So I don't really think that any test right now is going to be an accurate representation of where they are academically. I also think that, I really don't like the idea when we have the STAR test, typically when we stop teaching content and we just we just basically start talking about the STAR test and we start teaching this, well, not teaching, we start reteaching test taking strategies. That in itself right there is when you're pressing on the issue of learn this strategy, learn that strategy, just make sure that you're ready for the STAR test. That is going to make any child anxious. All right, that's also going to make the teachers anxious because it's almost like it's such a huge deal, and it's one test out of the year. We need to learn to minimize this STAR test. It doesn't break you as a person, and I think that's what we need to realize. It's just one assessment. It's just one snapshot. And if you fail it, guess what? You have multiple opportunities to pass it. And that's what we need to focus on.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
Can you repeat the question for me, sir?
Absolutely, sir. What is your position on funding for public schools based on high stakes accountability testing like the STAR exam?
I think schools should be funded based off of the number of students that you got. Whether your students perform at a high rate or low rate, if you start cutting funding, that kind of defeats the purpose, because now you take away from that school's ability to continue to support the students. I'm not a fan of standardized tests, never have been. The standardized tests aren't standard. And so with a district as diverse as ours, you can't have a standardized test, one. Two, again, I go back, if we were funded based off of how our students perform on a test, then we would get less and less money in some cases, considering the academic performance gap. So I think supporting that would be counterintuitive.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Mills.
Let me first say that I don't think that I'm a huge fan that one test carries so much weight, not just necessarily for funding, but in general for these kids as far as, whether they get to advance or not advance. With that said, it's kind of a state mandated issue. I don't think that the money that the district receives should be tied to that directly. I think we should try to come up with some other type of formula that we can use to evaluate these districts rather than just one test on one day. I was a sports guy growing up, still am a sports guy, and everybody has an off day. And so I hate for a kid to be judged or our district to be tied to funding based on how kids do for one day. But with that said, as it relates to this year's STAR testing, I think it's important that the kids do take this test. And the reason why I say that is we can't identify where these kids are and what learning gaps have been created in the last year unless we take the test and understand where the kids are. And so taking the STAR test, while I don't like the fact that the weight that it carries, I think we need to take it this year, especially so we can identify the learning gaps, because as I said earlier, COVID has amplified discrepancies in many ways, not just within schools, but across the board and in communities that were already struggling. And so we have campuses that were hurting and struggling academically before COVID. And again, COVID has amplified these things. And so we need to know at least where these kids stand so we can come up with a game plan on how to address these learning gaps and start filling them in.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. The next question, which we'll start with Ms. Carter, kind of similar. What's your position on using student test scores in evaluating a teacher's performance? Not necessarily based on incentive allotments per se, because I know that's a new topic that's coming to the fore, but in terms of teacher performance overall, in terms of their evaluation, what is your position on using student test scores in evaluating that teacher's performance? Ms. Carter, we'll start with you.
Sorry, I'm against the idea of doing that because, it's just unfair if you think about it, because you know what, if one teacher gets the GT students versus one teacher gets the students that are, lower performing or at risk, that's not fair. You have to think about that. And again, you've got some kids that have test anxiety. I think that also pits teachers against teachers. I just think that that's just a negative idea. And that puts too much emphasis again on testing results, STAR testing, just any type of district testing. It just puts too much emphasis on data, just the results of a test on any given day. Like I said, because each, and the teachers they do not get to decide what kid is going into their classroom. It's just, that's out of their hands. So I don't think it's fair to sit there and say, okay, you know what, your kids are doing great. 97% of them passed, but teacher B over here, only 80% of her kids passed. I don't think it's fair to sit there and say, well, maybe, she's a better teacher because 97% of her kids passed, because that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of variables that go into that. So it's not really, clean cut and clear.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Adams?
It's still the same as before. Not a fan of the test. I'm okay with the test assessing the student's ability, but not, even though I'm not a fan of the test assessing whether the teacher does that. Because again, like Ms. Carter said, and I'm sure everyone else will say that if it's not going to be fair to every teacher that received the higher performing or the better performing students that do great on tests. And I think we go back to some of the other ways where we evaluated how teachers perform kind of directly, not just off of the exam.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Mills?
Kind of, what I touched on earlier as far as is the funding, I don't love the idea that the teacher evaluations are tied strictly to a test. And so I think we've got to find ways to identify how kids, when they come into the classroom, where are they? And then address the needs of how can we get them to where we want them to be. And it's about progress throughout that school year with these kids. And so it's not necessarily about, okay, I'm going to teach you A, B, C, and D, and then we're going to test you on it. We have to understand the individual needs of each learner in every one of our classrooms, and we have to find a way to teach to them. And I believe that begins with evaluating them when you first get them in that classroom. And as far as the incentive pay that was discussed, at this last school board meeting, it wasn't all directly tied to, to testing and how students performed on the test. There was a formula involved. And so we need to come up with a way across the district, a standardized way to evaluate these teachers. If we allow each campus and each the administrators at each campus to come up with their own way, again, there could be some bias involved, but we have to come up with a standardized way to evaluate our teachers. And I don't know that it's fair, again, for to be evaluated on one day when we're in school for 9 or 10 months for one day to determine the outcome of a teacher's performance.
Thank you. Ms. Purser, you get to finish this one off.
Okay, well, I don't believe that a teacher's or an educator's performance should be based on that. However, there are pockets of our community, there are school district campuses that are really struggling, whether it be a grade level or whether that be the entire district, the campus. If there is a way that we can incentivize the best and the brightest and the most stellar teachers to go to those campuses and help raise the confidence level and the education value and level for those students, I don't know why we wouldn't want to do that. There are some teachers that are very satisfied and very happy where they are, but if they are incentivized, they might want to try to teach and educate a group of students that are really struggling. And I do think that we need to try to do this. I don't think it will pit teacher against teacher, colleague against colleague. What I do think it is going to do, though, is when they realize, hey, I'm receiving more money because I'm able to do this skill and you're capable of doing the same thing, I think they're going to be sharing and collaborating with other educators to help the entire grade level or the entire campus achieve greater scores on their campus and have a greater outcome for those students. So I think it will bring more collaboration, actually. And I think, they're kind of they're comrades. They want to help each other. They're not out there to get against each other. They want all teachers to make more money. And I think if they have the key and the ability and they know other teachers that have that same ability and teaching style, or again, ability, I think they're going to help each other gain that greater salary. And so I'm really looking forward to putting together this program and helping teachers get more money because they've got a certain skill that is going to help accelerate the learning ability of some very challenging students.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, our next and our last chunk of questions are some miscellaneous questions. This will start with Ms. Carter. How will you support site-based decision-making at the campus level for KISD school employees and parents?
How will I support it? I don't actually understand your question because I support it. I like the idea of having the community involved, meaning the parents involved in it, with the teachers working and the administrators working side by side as far as what they need to prove and what they need to prove upon in the campus.
How would you facilitate that? How would you,
Oh, well, I would hope that the school would go ahead and try to recruit parents to get involved. I would hope that they have staff that would go. I don't like the idea of people being appointed to positions. That's what my main thing is. I think that people should volunteer, and whoever volunteers should be a part of that committee. I don't like the appointment process because I think that lacks transparency. And I think that some people that would actually want to be a part of it are basically prohibited from being a part of a committee like that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Adams?
I've seen this done in other districts. I would push a teacher representative is elected, a parent representative is elected by a parent teacher organization or PTA. And then of course you have your administration and you get a community volunteer. But that way we're not appointing, and I agree with not volunteering anyone. But if we allow some type of electoral process, then the representation is there. If following policy, I would even go visit some of them just hey, as a board member, I'm interested in what you're doing. And then if possible, I would push for some of the administrators. Hey, maybe we should go down and visit. I take it over. Maybe you should sit in just to let them know how important that process is. So if you show somebody how important something is, the more engaged they will be.
Thank you, Mr. Thanks, Mr. Mills.
Yeah, the site-based decision is, that's a great avenue and it's a great process to get, stakeholders involved in the process of what's going on at our campuses and within the district. And so we've got to find a way to attract, the best minds that we can. And, as far as, having people appointed, I think we need to offer it to as many people as we can to get them in the room so that their voices can be heard directly from, the administrators at the campuses. And then that can get passed up, up the food chain. But again, it's a great process as far as getting involvement. We just want to make sure that we have representation for everybody, and that their voices are being heard. And then we got to make sure that we follow through with what's being presented at these meetings, and making sure that the district is following through with the recommendations from parents and everybody else.
Thank you, Ms. Purser.
Well, site-based is absolutely important. The problem with our community, it's so diverse, but even inside those campuses, the campuses themselves are so diverse and have different needs. So I think it's really important that they have a voice. So I would be very encouraging for that. I also believe the district should maintain standards. All of our campuses should have a standard that all the campus leadership understand, but then we have to make sure that we trust the leadership on each campus to be able to recruit the volunteers that help mold the decision-making that's going on in their campus level, because again, there's just so many different issues depending on where they are in our community, whether they're fighting the food desert issue, whether they're fighting the growth issue, roads falling apart, whatever it is, the no electricity. I mean, every campus has a different issue. So we just want to make sure that we let their voices be heard. But again, we must make sure that those volunteers feel like their voice is being heard, that they're being listened to. Sometimes decisions don't happen overnight. I think people have to be very patient about that, but make sure that campus leadership brings to the table whatever those issues are, and that hopefully the school district supports whatever that site-based decision is.
All right, thank you. By a show of hands, would each of you be, because it's important for us in terms of having our voice, by a show of hands, would each of you be willing to meet with the leadership and the members of Killeen Educators Association on a regular basis to talk about issues and concerns? Just show of hands. 1, 2, 3, all 4 of you. We like to see that. So I guess, could you give us 30 seconds, just really briefly on why that's important to you? And I think I accidentally skipped over Ms. Purser last time to go first, so we'll let her go first this time.
I think in a nutshell, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we support site-based decisions. We support the public. We want parent involvement. We want them to participate. So I just want to make sure that everybody clearly understands that we are, the problem with our position is we set policy and we set budget. That's what we do in a nutshell. So, we just have to make sure that everybody understands that our hands are tied to a point. There are little minute things that we are not really supposed to be touching. The day-to-day, making sure that everybody is doing their job, micromanaging, that's not my job. The only thing that I can do is set the policy, set the standard for the district, set the budget for the district, and then I've got to make sure that whenever someone comes to me and says to me, whether it be an organization such as yourself or an individual parent, that we at least listen and say, okay, where is it that we can approve upon the policy or the funding for this item?
Thank you. Ms. Carter?
I think it's important to to basically, like I said, to know what's going on, share, to know what concerns that the staff has, because, you know, we're on the outside looking in. And that's why I said, I think it's just, I would love the communication. I would love the feedback, because that helps in setting policy, knowing, you know, basically what the staff is feeling, what the day-to-day issues are. Because, you know, sometimes we may not know, but, you know, there may be some biased policies that we're not aware of. We're not going to be aware of that unless the staff feels comfortable enough to share those things with us, because some of those policies may have to be adjusted or changed. And so that's why I think that having that feedback from the staff, and I want to make sure to say it's in an environment where they're not going to feel retaliated against. I think that's really important, so that they can share their ideas and their concerns with the school board members, or whoever's, you know, in this case, school board members. But that's why I think it's important to have these regular meetings, because things change, you know, from day to day.
Thank you. Mr. Adams.
We have a diverse school district. We all make up the district. And I think in order to make policies, and so we have sound decisions, we have to get out and meet with every constituency that make up the district. So yeah, I think it's very important to sit down with the Educators Association. Even if it's just a group of teachers that's not a part of it, I think we need to meet with auxiliary employees, substitutes, or even folks that are just in the community. But it helps when we get ready to vote, that we're voting not just based off of what we think, and we vote based off of what the input that we receive. And sometimes if it might be important to be a sounding board for something that might be coming up, and it could, and I may not agree with what your stance is, then it's my opportunity to, hey, I agree with what's being presented, and I should be able to try to convince you. But if you still don't agree, then I still need to support or present your stance, regardless of whether it's pro or con the issue. And so I think that is very integral for a sitting board member to meet with as many constituencies as possible, especially those that make up the groups that make up our teachers and staff.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Mills.
You know, as it relates to KEA, I think it's obviously important to meet with you guys and to hear your concerns as often as possible. Y'all have a pulse on the district and those working every single day. And so us as board members, we may not have that exact pulse on what's going on based on the fact that, you know, that we have careers or other things going on. But it's also important just to meet with everybody in the district and all the stakeholders and all the community leaders and parents and teachers and even the students to get a pulse on what's going on in the district and to hear those concerns. You know, the school board's job is to be the voice for those people and to hold the district administration accountable. And kind of to touch on what Ms. Purser said, you know, it's not our job to run the day-to-day operations of the district, but it is our job to make sure that those that are hired to do that, that they are held accountable to the standards that we put forward. So it's important to meet not only with you, but with all the organizations and community leaders and parents and everybody to ensure that we can be that voice every other Tuesday night, you know, when we get together.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And don't go away, because you get to start off the next question. What do you see as the biggest challenge confronting the district, and how do you plan on working to tackle that challenge if you're elected?
You know, I think I touched a little bit on it earlier. I think the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is going to be the educational and learning gaps that have been created due to COVID over this last 12 months or so. It's hard to believe that it's only been 12 months. It seems like almost forever ago, but it has changed so much in the district. And again, we've got to find a way to identify how far behind we've fallen, if we've fallen behind, and we've got to find out. So once we identify the gaps that have been created, we've got to find innovative ways to close those gaps and bring these kids back up to speed. You know, my stance on running for school board, again, is it's all about what's best for the kids and doing what's in their best interest. And so to me, that's the biggest challenge that we face is identifying and closing these educational gaps. And especially in campuses, again, that were struggling before COVID. And we've got to help every one of these kids get caught back up to speed and make sure that we haven't missed anything over these last 12 months.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Ms. Purser.
I think the biggest challenge that we are facing currently is going to be mental wellness. I think people are not eating right, sleeping right, their test grades, their education is poor. I think teachers have been taxed beyond means. We have frontline bus drivers that are frightened every day that they may catch this virus. We have done everything that we can to make sure that we have safety within reasonable measures, but we are all frightened of this. And I think it has really taxed everybody emotionally. So I do think that mental wellness is going to be the biggest issue that we're going to be facing. And I think our children are really suffering. Our educators are really suffering. Like I said, the bus drivers, they're all suffering right now. And I think that this is something that we cannot just dust under the rug and hope that a spring break or a summer break is going to take care of it. This is going to have lasting effects on a lot of people for a very long time. And if we don't make sure that everybody is well, we're going to see a continued deterioration of our community and people that we love.
Thank you, Ms. Purser. Ms. Carter.
I'm still muted. Okay. I think the biggest concern right now is basically safety in the education, the teaching that our students are getting right now. And I'm saying that as a parent. I feel really bad. It's like Ms. Purser was saying, our teachers are being very taxed right now. They're having to do double duty. They're teaching virtual as well as in person. And you know, for someone who's never, who hasn't planned, well, actually, this is new for everybody, basically. You know, this is unprecedented. But, you know, I mean, I've actually dealt with Schoology and I've actually put lessons online and done the virtual because I was sick a lot. But my point being is, but a lot of our teachers weren't basically, well, let's put it this way, they weren't Schoology proficient. It was just something they didn't have to do. You know, if they were tech savvy, then they did, and some of them didn't. And then all of a sudden it's boom, everyone has to learn how to use Schoology. And I think that part of this is being more proactive. I mean, we knew last year that COVID wasn't going anywhere. So I think that we could have been more proactive and we could have went ahead and put a virtual platform. Our teachers were working from home last year. We could have said, you guys, you know what? You need to go ahead and start preparing online lesson plans. In the case of, which is what we kind of figured, they would have to do some virtual learning. I think that we should have had our technologists go ahead and put a Schoology platform in place so that the teachers wouldn't have had to sit there and do folders 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, day of the week and all that. They could have lessened loads for the teachers. I think that, you know, honestly, I was really disappointed that our teachers weren't granted the flexibility to sit there and say, what do you guys want to focus on? Do you want to be a virtual teacher or do you want to be an in-person teacher? I think that would have taken some of the load off of them. And that wasn't given, that wasn't an option. And I had hoped that by the spring semester, that would have been an option. Like I said, and I know Dr. Kraft said maybe next year virtual will not be, you know, permitted depending on what the legislator says, but again, being proactive, just in case it is, then we need to go ahead and prepare that. So again, the teachers are not set in the same situation they are right now. Granted, having said that the teachers are doing double duty, this also negatively affects the students who are learning virtually or who are learning in person. They're getting further and further behind. It's just a lose-lose situation for everyone. And so that's what my biggest concern is right now, is basically tackling that and being proactive for next year.
Thank you. Mr. Adams.
I would say biggest concern is the academic achievement gaps. I mean, there's data that show there were gaps, there were issues with the gap prior to COVID, especially among those populations of color and economically disadvantaged. And it's still there. And I think the ways to address that are encompassing of mental wellness, consistency of policies and procedures, improving teacher morale and involvement. All those things will affect the academic achievement gap. So we have to look at what we were doing before COVID that wasn't working, and now look at ways to do things better. And I think we once we address those mental wellness, those consistency issues, those morale issues, and those engagement and involvement issues, we will see our academic gap close, almost eradicated, I believe. And so as we do this, I think we shift our focus to having higher expectations for all once we have closed that gap.
Thank you. It's the moment we've all been waiting for, the last question. And I will have Mr. Adams, we'll just go right down that order. And it's basically your shot. If there's anything that you feel we haven't covered tonight, you get a couple of minutes to talk about that. So we'll start with Mr. Adams and go right down the line to finish out.
I think we've covered a whole lot. So I'm sitting there thinking, we all care. We all have the qualities to be good board members. But I consider myself an active, engaging person. So we didn't talk about how much we will be out and about in the week where we did indirectly. So I would like to see us all succeed, no matter who is on the board. But definitely put me there. So, but I believe that once we look at a myriad of once we take all the issues, be it special education, we didn't really talk about that tonight, and that needs to be revamped. We look at ESL, English as a second language. You listen to students say, hey, this is just a playtime period. We need to address that. We look at how we're funding individual schools. We look at the consistency of policies and how things are done at each school. This district has a lot of potential to be better than what it is. And it's a great district now, but we can achieve so much more.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Mills.
Again, we've touched on a lot of topics, and I feel like it was a lot of the high notes. So I don't know if there's one specific, item that I want to touch on, other than just to say that, this process of running the school district and ensuring that we're doing what's in the best interest of our kids. It's a community effort, and the school board is just one piece to that puzzle. And so we certainly have a role to play as school board members as far as listening to our constituents, whether, again, if it's teachers, parents, taxpayers, and then being that voice to the district and to the school board. But it's certainly a community effort that we all need to be involved in, and we need to listen to the voices of people that have concerns or issues and make sure that we raise those concerns and issues, and that we continue to move the ball forward, so to speak. But again, I know how great this district is. Attended KSD my whole life. My kids go there. I love this district. We chose to raise our family here. And I'm proud to be a part of this process, and I hope to get to represent everybody in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Ms. Purser.
I think one thing that I would like to kind of visit with and touch on is the fact that during the two tremendous crises that we had this school year, we had an admin team that absolutely did above and beyond what they needed to do to make sure that everybody has been able to do their job, that students have been able to go to school, students have been fed, there's been transportation provided. During the winter storm that we had, we need to remember that there were things happening and decisions being made behind the scenes that truly made a difference in lives. When the municipalities reached out to us because they could not get fuel, it was our school district that provided fuel to the municipalities' first responders. When we needed meals provided to the first responders and to families that were unable to get those resources, it was our team of admin that had the staff hired that stood up and came to work and did the job beautifully and did not complain because they knew that they needed to do what was best for the community. So when you talk about the heartbeat of the community, we are the heartbeat of our community. And when times get tough, the school district team, staff, employees, from the transportation, taking people to the school facilities to make sure that if we've got leakage going on and we've got water pipes broken, we've got to be able to cut water off. Those things were happening while we were all trying to build wood fireplaces and, you know, make sure that we stayed warm under our blankets. These people went to work. So I have to commend them and make sure that everybody understands that there was, during these two crises, I mean, usually we get one crisis. Our school district we were dealing with two, and we had a fabulous team that came together and did their job, and they have to be commended for that. So good job, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Purser. And Ms. Carter, you get tonight's last word. Well, besides me.
I don't have any additional, I think you guys covered all the bases. You guys asked some pretty tough questions. It was a whole, basically it was a whole spectrum of questions that you guys asked.
We try to be thorough. We're educators after all. So I guess the thing for me that gave me the most hope that I saw were the number of faces that were nodding, even as your opponents or other, the ones running for the other place were speaking. There were a lot of head nods of agreement. And I think that speaks well in terms of overall community unity as we go to move forward. So that was one thing that I personally found very, very encouraging. And on that note, this will conclude our candidate forum. And on behalf of Killeen Educators Association, I'd like to thank all of the candidates for giving their time tonight to speak to us and to you today. Again, for place 6, their candidates Riakos Adams and Cullen Mills. For place 7, their candidates Lan Carter and Joanne Purser. I'd also like to thank you for tuning in and listening to our event, and I'd like once more to encourage you to exercise your right to vote. The education of America's children impacts every person in every way. And as the ancient philosopher Pericles said, just because you don't take an interest in politics doesn't mean that politics won't take an interest in you. Early voting runs from April 19th to the 27th, and Election Day is Saturday, May 1st. We thank you very much for watching.